You're listening to the Cultivating Careers in Alternative Proteins podcast, a podcast which features students and early career professionals who work in the alternative protein industry, where they discuss their journeys and deliver advice on how you can start a career in this revolutionary field. I always like to showcase unique stories of people on the podcast, and this episode's guest has a very different path into the alternative protein industry, as she switched majors and joined a company with quite a special approach to developing plant proteins. Rebecca Bradley is the Chief Marketing Officer at Terra Bioindustries, a Canadian-based company that upcycles spent grain to make plant-based protein ingredients and sugar feedstocks for fermentation. She has a master's in biotechnology and a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, with a specialization in plant science, both from the University of Guelph. In 2021, Rebecca and her partner won the Proteus Innovation Competition, where over a 4-month period they developed an abstract, business plan, and a pitch, all of which has helped her land her role at Terra Bioindustries. Please enjoy this interview with Rebecca, where she shares how she found her dream role in the alternative protein industry and explains how you can find your dream role too. Welcome, Rebecca, to the Cultivating Careers in Alternative Proteins podcast. I am very excited to have you on the show and looking forward to hearing all about your experiences and your journey to the alternative protein space.
Likewise, I'm happy to share my story.
Excellent. So I know you have a very unique background and maybe aren't necessarily working directly in conventional, I'll say, alternative proteins and more on the side of upcycling and using plant proteins. So I thought maybe just as a starting off question, what was really the first time that you heard of the terms alternative proteins and upcycling?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a vegetarian, so alternative protein was just something that I was familiar with from a consumer's perspective. But I had started to really learn about food supply chains, especially the meat industry and how that affects the planet during my undergrad. And that was what really influenced me to become a vegetarian. I just knew that the things that we put on our plate and the things that we eat can really affect our planet. And so by making that conscious decision to learn more about what I am putting on my plate and discovering alternative protein, it just kind of made me feel a little bit better about the decisions and the impacts that I can make. I was really focusing on companies like Beyond Meat and Perfect Day and Every, that fermentation company, during my grad degree, because these companies were already blowing up at the time. And we used them as business cases, but I never really focused on the upcycling until after my grad degree, because you don't really think of upcycling as something that you could do in the food industry. Who wants to eat upcycled food, or are we taking things out of the trash? But I was familiar about upcycling in a lot of other industries. So it made sense that if there was edible food out there that was going to waste, especially when 1/3 of the food that we produce does end up in landfills, maybe if we just upcycled that food and brought it back into the food industry, we could help to make those same positive decisions and positive impacts that I felt like I was making as a vegetarian. So the upcycling part of the food industry, I didn't really learn about until I started to take a deeper dive, both in my grad degree and afterwards.
All right. Yeah. And food waste is a very large contributor to climate change and is a huge problem that needs to be addressed. And the food industry has not done a very good job of that. And I'm glad that you're able to have found a way to match both upcycling and alternative proteins.
Oh, absolutely. I really got inspired in the upcycling area when I was noticing all of these companies that were doing direct-to-consumer grocery delivery, and they were taking that reject food or what would be food waste and delivering it direct to the consumer to give them the power of choice back. If we could see the ugly food, would we want it going to the landfills, or would we just say, no, it's still food? So those direct-to-consumer grocery delivery systems really kind of open the door for acceptance of upcycling in the food industry. And I think that the fermentation industry as well, one that has really blown up in the alternative protein area. The fermentation industry, they're pros at upcycling. So you really find these niche areas starting to pop up in the alternative protein industry, in the food industry, in the delivery industry that are really tapping into upcycling into these undervalued sources of food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 100% agree. I've noticed it becoming a lot more apparent and front and center in consumers' minds, and there's lots more options available to consumers to find upcycled products.
Yes, absolutely.
And did you ever foresee yourself pursuing a career in either alternative proteins or upcycling?
Gosh, yes and no. I've wanted to be passionate about what I do. I think everybody does. Your hope is that you can get a career and be happy about that career, wake up in the morning and love what you do. That's living the dream, right? So I knew that I needed to maybe think outside the box a little bit, starting from when I was doing my university degree. You invest a lot into your education, and there's a lot of pressure on you. And a lot of times you're still a teenager. There's a lot of pressure on you to pick the right program and turn that into a career when you graduate. So I kind of was invested right then and there during my academic pathway, where I was doing a bachelor's of biology and I was falling in love with all these different areas of biology. So I wanted to make sure that I was investigating them to their fullest to see if I could find a passionate career path from that. I realized that I needed to find an overlap between not just my academic skills, the courses that I was good at, but also my soft skills, the stuff that I could bring to the table as an individual, and some of my hobbies, the stuff that might set me apart from my peers. So that kind of led down this path of figuring out, okay, maybe I need more than just an undergraduate. Maybe I should go to grad school to further build upon these academic skills, soft skills, and even turn my hobbies kind of into these traits that I was graduating with. So it led to me transitioning into a master's of biotechnology. And that kind of led one thing to another. And eventually I started to see this career in alternative protein and upcycling. So I did not see it exactly when I started my undergrad, but I knew that I wanted to be passionate about it. And I knew if I kept looking into all these different avenues that my undergrad offered, that my master's degree offered, that eventually I would find a career with enough determination. I would find a career that I loved.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that you're trying to leverage your hobbies to turn it into a career. Was there a particular hobby that you had at the time that you thought could be a potential career option?
Yes, I'm a little bit of a nerd both in school and outside of school. I was really interested in computers and video games, and I built my own computers. I was really interested in a little bit of the gaming area, and so there was like the streaming side of things. So I was kind of familiar with some of the video editing, audio stuff, a little bit of graphic design here and there as hobbies, just because you're around all these creative people when you're part of these gamer communities or other nerd demographics. If you're into like D&D, there's a lot of creatives there. So it's amazing how these hobbies lead to passionate learning, which lead to developed skills that you can then turn into a career.
Have you been able to leverage your interest in computers and gaming and graphic design into your current role at all?
Absolutely. So I'm not actually able to just clock in and start playing video games. That would be really fun. But I am able to use some of the skills that I have learned, as you said, in graphic design, video editing, and just like the creative side of things. When you really exercise your skills, your creative skills and your hobbies, I was actually able to transition that into my career. I work for a company, Terra Bioindustries. They're a startup here in Canada, and I joined them when they were still very young. And it was just the two co-founders who are scientists, and they needed a little bit of that creative je ne sais quoi. So believe it or not, it was those skills that I had learned through my hobbies, being a little bit of an amateur graphic designer, an amateur video editor, but also just having creative ideas and new perspectives. That is what I believe won me the role.
No. Okay. I'm honestly quite surprised to hear that. I wouldn't have imagined that there would have been too much relevance between your hobbies there and the role that you have now.
Yeah, I'm blessed that I am able to go and speak. As our alumnus, I'm able to go and visit my alma mater and speak to some of the current students. And I tell them all the time that if you get to that interview stage, be prepared to talk about some of the skills that you have gained outside of school. It could be your extracurriculars, it could be your hobbies, it could be those hours that you spent refreshing a page waiting for Taylor Swift tickets because that shows perseverance, consistency, determination. Like, you want to be able to talk about things, obviously in a professional sense, but these are still skills that you have. Just because they're not inside a normal 9 to 5 doesn't mean that they don't belong on a resume, maybe just a little bit jazzed up.
No, yeah, absolutely. There's those side things that you do that demonstrate that you have other skills and capabilities that you can contribute to the company as well. And sometimes it can even just be helpful to find something that you relate with the interviewer, and it makes your interview go more smoothly too.
Oh, absolutely. Always try and make them laugh if you can. Not an awkward laugh, a proper belly laugh, and you know that you've connected on a personal level.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, was there a particular moment that really sparked your change to move from your more of a science background to more of the business type role that you have now?
Yes, there was. It actually happened right at the beginning of the pandemic. I think a lot of us had taken that time to really reflect on our life. We didn't really have much of a choice. But it was in that moment when I was actually doing a different master's degree. I was doing a thesis degree where I was spending every day in a lab, almost always alone and doing my own research. And I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. And then when the pandemic happened, we were limited to how much time we could spend in the lab, and you 100% had to be alone. And a lot of times you were just working from home. And I wasn't feeling completely happy. And I was wondering why in my undergrad I had felt happier. So I really had to do some reflecting. At the time, I actually had an academic mentor, and they were able to point out that maybe I should think about some of the key things that would lead to purpose. And you know what? You and I had actually had a little bit of a conversation before about this conversation I had with my mentor. And you had said it reminded you of the Ikigai, the Japanese Venn diagram that helps you determine your true purpose in life. And this mentor walked me through this exact same thing. They asked me, what are you good at? And how are you aware of what you're good at? What does the world need? And can you get paid for this? But my mentor actually took it a little bit of a step further. I went back and I looked at my notes because for some reason there was something that they said that really resonated with me. And they said to narrow it down even further to a professional like skill is not just what you think you're good at. What have you been told that you're good at? Other people have told you this. So for me, I've always been told that I was really good at presentations in class. It could be the hardest course for me. I could be doing really poorly in it. But if there was a PowerPoint presentation, oh, I was getting an A for that. My grade was saved. So that was like the thing that I was good at. And then they asked me, what's something that you can do faster than most people? Because that's what you're efficient at. So that makes you an efficient employee. So for me, it was usually the brainstorming stage or the coming up with an idea and executing that idea. And it was typically more on the creative side of it. So if it was creating an experiment and actually like planning it out, that I could do really quickly. Thinking of how the PowerPoint presentation would be laid out, or if we had to do multimedia, that creative part of it, that storyboarding, that part of it was really easy for me. And that was, again, because I was a natural creative, I could kind of think of those things. I had all these ideas going around in my head, oh, let's use them. And then the last one was, what do you consider the most valuable skill? So kind of similar to the, what does the world need? But the most valuable skill, it could be for the world, could be just for your role, or it could be what you think the company needs. If you're applying for a job, what is the most valuable skill that this company is in dire need of right now? So if you can find that sweet spot between what you've been told that you're good at, what you can do faster than other people, and what you think this company really needs, that would help you. For me, when I was doing my master's degree, my thesis, And the pandemic hit, and I was doing this self-reflection, and I was narrowing all that down for the what does this company need? It was more of what does the world need, or what is it that I would feel fulfilled by? It made me realize that I wanted to present, I wanted to be creative, I wanted to be a part of the strategizing. I needed to be able to use my science background, but in a creative manner. And I could not do that in the lab. So it was in that moment when the world was shutting down, the borders were closing, that I decided to drop out of school. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I hopped on a plane and I visited my boyfriend at the time. And I knew I needed to get away. I needed to think. I was Googling a ton. And it turns out that at the same university that I just dropped out of, they actually had a different master's program that could help me do science in a creative way. It was the Master of Biotechnology at the University of Guelph. And it sounds super sciencey, but they actually combine biotechnology, biology, advanced science with business and entrepreneurship. So the whole goal of this program was about taking innovation from in the lab on the bench and bringing it to the business world, being that bridge between the scientists and the stakeholders. So I joined that program, and it was the best decision I ever made because I got to experience my ikigai for the first time, my purpose, where I got to use my scientific background. The science courses were a breeze, and I got to learn the business side of things by taking business courses and present almost every week and get A's because I was presenting again. So it felt great and it felt fulfilling, and I knew, okay, I could just keep following this and make a career out of it.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think you're very fortunate to find your ikigai so early in your career, because many people rarely ever find it in their entire career. So I'm glad that you were able to spend that time and do the reflection and to really figure out what it was that was your ikigai. And I'll provide a link to the whole concept in the show notes for people who want to learn more about that process.
I highly recommend any professional at any level. It's something that you could do sitting down. Typically, I do it with other people around me just to bounce ideas off of them, because it can be hard looking in a mirror. You see a mirrored version of yourself. Sometimes it's better to sit down with somebody else who can help you answer those questions because they can see you as you truly are. So it helps to maybe silence the critic a little bit. Especially as a professional, we can be hard on ourselves. But if you complete this and you fill it out, you can see if your current role is something that is fulfilling for you, or if not, it can help you identify why. And next time you go for your quarterly review or annual review with your higher up, you can bring it to them and show them and say, is there a way that we could maybe modify my role to include responsibilities that align more with, maybe don't say, oh, my higher purpose, but something that would be more fulfilling.
Right. Yeah. And that makes your job more enjoyable. You're more likely to stay there and you're more likely to do a better job with your work. So there's definitely a win-win.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you eventually come across Terra Bioindustries?
It was pretty seamless. I was very, very fortunate during my master's degree when I had this revelation and I felt like I was becoming the best version of myself, and the pandemic was starting to wind down and felt like things were coming back to normal. At the end of that program, we actually finished it off with a capstone project. It's similar to like a co-op placement, but because this is a little bit of a dual degree between science and business, you can either choose to be placed in a lab position or a business position as an intern. And we had various scientists and companies that would pitch their ideas to us, and we would apply to them like traditional careers. Terra Bioindustries was one of those companies. And they were actually one of the first ones to present to us. So I knew fairly early on when starting this program that I really liked the pitch. I liked the idea of the company. And I made it my mission to really set up the rest of the program to help me succeed in getting a position with them. The interesting thing was when they presented the company to us, and I say this with all love and respect to the co-founders, the PowerPoint needed some work.
And that's why they needed you.
That was my cover letter.
Nice. It's great. So I realize for people who aren't very familiar with Terra Bioindustries or really the term upcycling, can you briefly explain what Terra Bioindustries does and why it's important?
Oh, Jeffrey, I would love to. Terra Bioindustries is an upcycling company in the food industry. So the co-founders actually created this amazing platform that allows you to use basic science, basic biotechnology, and take what would be food waste, stuff that's destined for the landfill, and instead upcycle it, break it down into simple compounds. And these simple compounds are things like sugars, proteins, fibers, oils, and these can go right back into other industries. It doesn't always have to be the food industry. If it's a pharmaceutical or a sugar for fermentation, it'll go to those respective industries. But these are completely sustainable, 100% upcycled compounds. And one of the first avenues that we're targeting is the 40 million tons of brewers' spent grains that come out of the beer industry every year. So this same platform, we're able to take these grains that are that byproduct of the brewing process, and they go into the landfill, or best case scenarios, they might be used as animal feed, but we save them, upcycle them, break them down, and all that fiber is broken down into a simple sugar mixture. We call this mixture recyclose, and this is perfect for the fermentation industry. And then what's left over is this protein, this plant-based protein that we dry down into a plant-based protein ingredient. So it's a great way to, again, cut down on food waste, but the process also produces less emissions than if you used it as animal feed, or if you used the grains or sent the grains to landfill. So it's actually preventing more carbon than it produces.
Wow. So it's carbon negative then?
In a way, yes. Yeah.
Wow. That's really amazing and very impressive. And it sounds like they do require someone who has a thorough understanding of scientific principles to be able to convey that to the average person. And I think that's where your role there comes in. So can you elaborate more on what your role is there and why it's unique?
Absolutely. So they brought me on back in May of 2021 as a marketer. So they wanted me to just help to create their PowerPoints, help to refine their message, help them refine their value proposition, do some market research. It has since evolved because it is a startup. It's a very small team. So a lot of us are helping each other out where we can. So I was helping with some of the business development, some of the strategy. I tried with regulation. That one went a bit over my head, but luckily my colleague was able to pick it up and she's done fantastic with it. But my role evolved from just doing basic market research and designing some PowerPoints to now leading all of our marketing efforts and our brand development. I help to build the Terra Bioindustries brand. I'm able to tell and refine their story, representing them at live pitches, industry events, creating digital marketing campaigns. And now I have some new teammates joining the team, and we're kind of tackling that together.
Wow, that's fantastic. And do you feel that you were able to found your ikigai in your role that you have now?
I believe so, yes. It's actually expanded on the things that I'm good at, the things that I'm fast at. You learn a lot when you're in a startup, or if you change careers, change fields, you're going to learn a lot. That's just the nature of it. But it's really that marriage between science and the business side of things that really ignites my fire in a way. I love being able to go up on a stage and pitch to an audience the company and answer their questions, knowing that I can confidently represent this information, this science with my technical background, but still be able to translate it into English.
Yeah, right. I'm glad that things have worked out well for you, but I was wondering if you've had any regrets at all in your career.
This is a tough question to answer, but I think I do. My number one regret, and it's something that I'm practicing now, but if you're going to listen to anything I say, maybe just please listen to this. Write down your successes because you will forget them. I didn't write down my successes. I didn't record my successes because I thought, oh, I'll remember them. I know that I did this. I know that I'm good at this. But days fly by. A few years from now, you're not going to remember it. And even if it's like the little ones are the ones that matter too. So now I learned this tip online. I save my accomplishments into an email in my Google email account. So if I get any positive feedback, that goes into that email folder. If I'm able to solve a problem and it's all wrapped up in a nice email thread, that goes into the folder. If it's not in an email, I write an email to myself. Hey, this happened today, and this was really cool, and this person said this, and it goes into my folder. Because if I'm sitting down with a new hire, for example, and I need to explain to them, these are the things that you could be experiencing, I don't remember. I don't brag or whatever. So, okay, let's reference this folder. Here's some actual examples. If I need to go and sit down and negotiate my contract, maybe it's a review period. Here's everything that I did this year. Oh, right. Okay, let's negotiate my role. That's actually how we expanded my title to be Chief Marketing Officer, was because we looked at my accomplishments, everything that I'd saved, everything I stored away for the winter, like a little squirrel. We reviewed that and we said, okay, my title doesn't match what I'm doing anymore. Let's reflect it to my scope. I think it's useful for other professionals as well. If you're looking to transition into a different career and you have that, oh, there you go. You could build your resume and your cover letter off of all of your successes. So my number one regret was not writing down my successes from day one when I started at the company, talking about how quickly I learned stuff, whatever. But another regret is not doing that when I was a student. Some of my accomplishments from projects, group work, peers, or teachers praising me, not having that written down somewhere. Even if I never use it, what if I do? So write down your successes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's such a great piece of advice. And yeah, I would definitely echo that. And if you ever transition jobs, it's good to have that as like a reference point for, as you mentioned, building your resume. And also if you do it on say like a weekly basis, you kind of reflect back on the week and say, hey, what did I accomplish? And it kind of improves your self-esteem, makes you feel like, oh, I actually did something this week. Even if a lot of things went bad that week, there's always probably something that still went pretty well that you can still feel like, okay, it was a decent week because I accomplished X, Y, Z.
Oh, totally. If I'm having a bad day, just put on some music, grab a snack, and just peruse that.
Yeah. So do you have any other advice for job seekers in the alternative protein space?
Yes. If you're looking for a job in alt protein, you could do what I did when I was in undergrad, where I was looking at the Beyond Meat career page. I was looking at my favorite alt protein companies and apply to them. You never know if you'll get a job, but there are some other ways you could look as well, some ways that you might not be as aware of. If you think that you have a little bit of an interest in startups, it is a little bit of a risky area, but especially for those young professionals, you can really accelerate your professional development with a startup. So if you're interested in that, definitely try reaching out to some of your local accelerators and incubators closer to home. If you went to a university, check with them to see if they have their own incubator in-house. Sit down with a coordinator, let them know, these are my goals, this is where I'm heading. Are there any companies that maybe align with that I could start helping out? You could easily land an internship. Let's be realistic here. These startups might not be able to pay you right off the bat. But if you're in a comfortable enough position and you want to build up your resume a bit, especially if you're still in school or if you're a recent grad, it might be worth your time. You might even find a startup that is able to pay for you full time. But if you do land that job, let's say you're working for them for free, you really love it there, they really love you, go on Google and look up salary subsidies. Look up, if you're a new graduate, recent graduate salary subsidies, government subsidies, co-op placement subsidies. If you're part of an underrepresented community, look up those kinds of salary subsidies and you let your employer know, because obviously you want to get paid as soon as you can. They'll create a full-time role for you. And now they've achieved a major milestone of hiring their first full-time paid employee. So that can be a great way to actually build your own role because you start working for them for free. You can kind of call the shots a little bit on what you do, what you can't do. You build a role for yourself. Now you're getting paid. Now you're an essential part of that company.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent piece of advice. And I know the Canadian government is actually quite good on providing salary subsidy options to students and startups as well.
Yes. And if you are in Canada and you're in Ontario and you're looking for kind of a similar pathway as I did, if you're still a student, look into MyTax, MITACS. If you're a recent graduate, you can look into BioEnterprise. Another recent grad, or for employees over 30, IRAP, they have subsidies as well. If you're anywhere else, look up your local subsidies. Most municipalities, provincial or state, even federal, will have subsidies for career development, especially in highly innovative technical areas like food, agriculture, any of those.
I'll provide links to those in the show notes.
Awesome. And for those of you that are maybe looking for more of a traditional concrete role right off the bat, I would definitely suggest signing up for some free newsletters in the food industry. If you sign up to a bunch, you're going to get these newsletters in your email almost every day. And they post about opportunities in startups, small companies that have just gotten some funding and they've got these new roles that they can hire full time. So look out for those. If you need some help finding some, I'd recommend taking a look at Food Hack. The Good Food Institute has one, and they focused a lot on alternative protein. Alt Meat magazine, they've got paid options. They might have a free one as well. Food Navigator, and so many more. So if there's an area that you're interested in, sign up for these newsletters, keep an eye out for opportunities. And if you do apply and you land an interview, you're going to impress the interviewer with how much you know just from these newsletters.
Oh yeah, you could really blow them away. I think it's another great piece of advice. For people who are interested in potentially working for Terra Bioindustries, is Terra Bioindustries actively hiring? And if so, what types of roles and where should people apply?
So we're not hiring right now, but we will be. So we're actually in the middle of a raise as well. So once we get that money coming in and we're able to bring on some more full-time employees, we do plan to have these openings in early 2024. And these are going to be some openings in some similar areas to mine where it does combine that business and science, but then there's also some technical areas. So I know that we'll be needing some sales account managers, people that are going to be speaking directly with potential customers in either the fermentation industry or in the alternative protein and food industry. We're also going to need some marketers to come and help me out. We know that we need a digital marketer and stuff. So people that are passionate about these kinds of topics that would love to work on the computer, work remotely. But then we're also going to need those technical professionals, people helping with production, with quality assurance and stuff. So if you're interested in joining our team, we are going to have some of those positions available in the next year. So follow us on LinkedIn at Terra Bioindustries Inc. on LinkedIn, and you'll get those updates as soon as those opportunities are available. You could even start connecting with us now. We get to know you so that if things change maybe and we need somebody, we know who to reach out to. Or if you just want me to pass along your information to somebody who is hiring, I might know of a company. So reach out to us, reach out to other companies that you're interested in, other people, other employees, and just say, hey, if you have an opportunity, keep me in mind. If not, do you mind introducing me to somebody who is hiring?
Yeah, that's an excellent piece of advice. And I'm glad to hear that Terra Bioindustries will eventually be growing. And it sounds like there are roles that are similar to yourself there that listeners who want to follow a certain path you could be able to follow, or people who are going to be graduating next year. This would be an excellent opportunity to start building that relationship.
Yeah, we could definitely have a student co-op, especially. We'd love coordinating with universities to make sure that you are getting paid for a co-op. We don't always have to pay for it. The government is always willing to pay for co-op positions at universities and colleges. So that's another great way to start getting into a company, is trying to create a co-op position. A lot of companies don't realize that they could offer these co-op opportunities and get essentially a free intern.
Yeah, at the company I work for now, we hired our first intern and worked out beautifully. She's been a tremendous asset to our team. And yeah, we're definitely going to do it again. It's definitely another win-win relationship.
A total win-win.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or discuss?
I don't believe so. I do want to say if there are listeners who are already in these areas in the food industry or in the fermentation industry that were maybe kind of interested in the upcycled products that I had mentioned, we have some pre-market trials going on right now. So if you're interested in trying out some prototypes, we would absolutely love to send you some on our expense just to get feedback and honestly just connecting with people in the industry to learn what the needs are so that we can make upcycled and sustainable inputs that help you reduce your carbon footprint with these negative carbon values. But we want to make sure we're creating products that you actually need and that you want. So if that sounds of interest to you, you can definitely reach out to me. Or if you just want to try a free sample and give us some feedback, we'd love that as well.
Excellent. Is there a link I should provide in the show notes that people could reach out to learn more about that?
Totally. Yeah. On our website, terrabioindustries.com, we've got a contact us page. So you can reach out to us that way. Or just reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. If you're maybe a bit more casual, you just want to learn a little bit more, you can add me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active and I'll reply as soon as I can.
Great. I will put those in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and it's been so lovely speaking with you. And I've learned so much and really admire your passion and enthusiasm for this industry. And I really hope that some listeners are able to learn from your experiences and your regrets and so they don't make some mistakes and hopefully help them find their ikigai in the alternative protein industry.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed. I hope everybody is as happy with their careers as I am. I am very fortunate, but there's resources out there that can help you get to where you want to be. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak, Jeffrey. This was a great platform and I'd love to stay in touch with you and to your listeners as well. Feel free to reach out to me. And like I said, even if Terra doesn't have opportunities available right now, I'm sure we can find people within my network to pass you along to. Classic networking is sometimes the greatest way to open a door.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch and thank you again.
Thanks.
Most people take many years and go through numerous jobs before they find their ikigai. So if you haven't found yours yet, don't fret, because it could be the next thing you try. You just need to keep on exploring new things, and eventually, you'll find where you fit in, because there's a place for everyone, including you, to be a part of the alternative protein revolution. Are you looking for new career opportunities in the alternative protein industry? If so, then you should check out Talist's new features. You can create a profile, save your favorite jobs, or even find a co-founder through their platform. A link is provided in the show notes. If you want to learn more about careers in the alternative protein industry, please follow the Cultivating Careers in Alternative Proteins podcast on Instagram for weekly posts about episode releases, alternative protein resources, job boards, career advice, and so much more.